Are you at all familiar with that feeling of something has got to fucking change? Are you at all familiar with that feeling of something has got to change because it shows no signs of ever changing? And the thought of it just going on as it is, it's a thought that depresses you to your core. Because what comes hand in hand with that situation of no change ever is the prospect of having no choices ever. Because the choices have already been made. No agency ever. Because everything is already all mapped out. No freedom ever. Because the unchanging situation just does not allow any deviation from what must happen day in and day out. Are you at all familiar with that feeling? When our own sphere of influence is entirely held within the context of a situation that is resolutely not going to change, well, we have no sphere of influence at all. Are you at all familiar with that feeling of having no discernible, meaningful sphere of influence over your own experience? We are eternal truth in living iteration. That is what existence is, and that is, therefore, what we inescapably are. We are eternal truth in living iteration, and the only time that eternal truth in living iteration can feel good, feel better rather than worse, about inescapably being eternal truth in living iteration, is when that which does not feel good to us can be changed. Changed in the direction of that which feels better to us. Eternal truth in living iteration is what we are, at the level of each of us as an individual and at the scale of us all as a collective. And eternal truth in living iteration forever requires a sense of freedom to choose, agency, the ability to bring about change, and love, which is that which feels better rather than worse. We desire freedom, agency, and love in order that inescapably being ourselves can conceivably be a source of joy for us rather than a cause of misery for us. This is not a difficult thing for any of us to understand and appreciate, because it is innate within us all. A steady supply of freedom, agency, and love in your life. Is this something you would say yes to? The question doesn't even need asking. So now here is the thing that is very possibly going to sound kind of peculiar to you, kind of impossible to you. As living truth in eternal iteration, you do have a steady supply of freedom, agency, and love available to you. But here is the thing, and here is why me saying this may possibly sound peculiar and even impossible to you. Just because you do, as eternal truth in living iteration, have a steady supply of freedom, agency, and love available, does not at all mean that you will necessarily choose to access that supply and use it coherently for yourself. We have been raised by a human culture that is entirely unaware that we are eternal truth in living iteration. A human culture that is entirely unaware that we always have a steady supply of freedom, agency, and love available to us. And as malevolent as human culture may seem to be, because it essentially is, it is not human culture's fault. It is no more human culture's fault than it is our own. It is no more human culture's fault that it is a wounded and malevolent child than it is our fault that we are wounded and malevolent children. Always, when we expand together into a higher order of scale of being, we forget who we have been, who we are, along with forgetting our own eternal nature. And we begin creating new memories for ourselves together at this higher order of scale of being. And so, as amnesiac children, we create the best society that a large group of amnesiac children who have the entire world to themselves can create. And of course, it is going to become a malevolent society. It was created by children who were scared and confused and who hurt and wounded each other more and more as time went by. So now, when I come along and explain that we are eternal truth in living iteration and always have a steady supply of freedom, agency, and love, I am explaining this to people who have no living memory of anybody knowing and understanding such a thing. Only the memory of what it is like to live within a malevolent worldwide culture that tells them it is their friend, and lies and lies and lies and lies. The steady supply of freedom, agency, and love that is naturally available to us all, and which human culture so malevolently suppresses, to the point where you may well think I am talking of some nigh-on mythical skill only attained by great spiritual disciplines, is no more than your ability and freedom to make choices for yourself. That is it. That is all it is. It does not take any great meditation practice or any deep esoteric insight. It is only that. In the face of the cultural programming we have all been subject to our whole lives long, a cultural programming that is entirely malevolent, whether it recognizes this itself or not, it is often going to take courage. This is all. You do, as eternal truth in living iteration, always have the natural ability and freedom to choose as you will. This is a thing I recently made the conscious commitment to embody myself, as best I may. When faced with the decision to either remain on state benefits under the condition that I follow the universal credit guidelines that I apply for any jobs I am capable of, regardless of whether I actually want them or not, or simply decline that instruction and have no state support. I am no longer willing to collude with a cultural system I see as malevolent and damaging to us all. This decision of mine has taken genuine courage on my part because I am afraid. I have fallen in line with human culture all my life, along with everybody else. And to decide to no longer play the game of it, while everybody else in the world is still playing it, it makes me feel lonely and vulnerable. Others find it very hard to understand me, and I understand why they find it hard to understand me, despite how clearly I speak, despite how I do all I can to make myself as easy to understand as I can. I am lucid, I am articulate, I express myself clearly and plainly, but the truths I speak cut directly against the grain of human culture, and this unnerves most everybody. So yes, I feel lonely, afraid, and vulnerable. But I have reached that place where I am even more afraid of continuing to join in than I am of going against the grain of human culture and thereby making myself unacceptable to the rest of the world. I'm more afraid of doing what it takes to make myself accepted by our system than I am of risking homelessness, because I see so clearly just how much our system hates us. The idea of lying down and dying in the woods literally feels like a preferable option to me than that of shrugging and saying, "Okay, I give in. I'll do as you say." You may think of this as crazy, that human culture isn't all that bad. It is all that bad. If it doesn't feel all that bad to you, it is only because you are desensitized to it. It is all that bad. Human culture is the most awful thing in this entire world. I'd really rather not lie down and die in the woods. I'd much rather stay here sharing the truth with you. But I can't be sharing the truth with you while simultaneously joining in with the system. It's just not something I'm willing to do. I am eternal truth in living iteration, and I can and do choose as I please. Just watch me.